Good evening and welcome to Connecticut Politics Live. I'm Joe McGuire along with Michelle Batella. We have all the latest headlines affecting Connecticut, and our guest coming up tonight at 5:30 is former State Representative Russ Morin, who repped the 28th District from 2006 until he retired in 2021. Russ was Deputy Speaker of the House and also served as a member of the Finance, Transportation, Commerce, and Legislative Management Committees. So we will hit him on a wide range of topics. Michelle, welcome back. You were off on Friday. It was kind of an interesting episode as Jimmy and I hosted on Friday. And instead of a guest, we actually did a 30-minute version of our podcast where he and I sort of face off on issues. It was a lot of fun.
I heard. So it wasn't a boxing match. It was straight. We agree to disagree. Is that how it works?
It's funny. Yeah, we so definitely do. I actually was teaching a class this morning on podcasting, and Jimmy showed up for the class, and we explained to the class that, part of being on a podcast, it's a certain amount of acting that you're doing. And at times things will get heated on the podcast, and no matter what happens, as soon as it's over, we call each other on the phone. And don't take anything personally. Yeah. As I always say, neither one of us is the one who passed the laws or came up with the policies. We're just giving our perspective on it. I don't hold him responsible for any of those things. Even if he defends them, it is what it is. So what can I do? Blame him for it? It's so silly.
I love it. This is where we need to come to in our state, our country, where, agree to disagree, and we're still friends at the end of the day.
We all have different perspectives on life and on issues. And at the end of the day, it's not like you're personally responsible for passing those bills. If you like something and I don't, we can debate it and talk about it, but neither one of us ultimately caused it to happen. So why should we be angry at each other? If you want to be angry at the politicians, be angry at the political parties that are doing this. Don't be mad at each other. I think that's senseless, really.
Well, hence our representative republic that we live in. Elections have consequences, and this is where it goes from there. So, but let's get to the headlines.
Let's do it.
So CVS and Walgreens agreed to deliver $10.7 billion to fight the opioid epidemic across the country, with Connecticut set to receive about $127 million, Attorney General William Tong announced Monday. CVS will pay $5 billion and Walgreens will pay $5.7 billion nationwide, Tong said. Adding the recently announced settlement with Walmart, the three major chain pharmacies will pay nearly $14 billion, with Connecticut set to receive about $162 million. CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart agreed to a court-ordered injunctive relief that requires the pharmacies to monitor, report, and share data about suspicious activity related to opioid prescriptions. The terms of agreement will now go on to the states for their review. Each state will have until the end of 2022 to join, after which the CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart agreements will go to local governments around the country for a sign-on during the first quarter of 2023. Sorry, I was trying to understand what they were doing. So a sign-on, that's interesting. The latest settlement brings the total amount recovered from investigations and litigation nationwide against the pharmaceutical industry to more than $50 billion. Connecticut will have recovered $600 million to fight the opioid epidemic. It's about time, I think.
Yeah, well, this is obviously a really good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I guess I'm a little confused as to what these companies did per se. I'm not really sure I understand, but if they're paying money, I suppose they're admitting, probably without admitting guilt, admitting that they had quite a bit to do with the opioid crisis that we're and you know what, at the end of the day, this is one of those things that it is going to cost money to fix this problem. And
I'm with you. I'm a little not too sure about how their involvement, but I'm assuming Right now, the money is to save face. And they have
Right? Again,
big pharmacies, so
yeah, that's typically what these sorts of lawsuits are, right? It's like, well, we're not admitting any kind of guilt, but here's
right,
a ton of money because we didn't have anything to do with it, like wink,
right.
wink, nod, nod. So that is a lot of money, $600 million for Connecticut to fight the opioid,
Absolutely.
and we've talked about this quite a bit.
Oh,
It
absolutely. It's needed.
is needed, and this obviously is a real step in the right direction. Meanwhile, Connecticut is expanding its largest and newest job training initiative,
Mhm,
CareerConneCT,
mhm.
created as part of an ongoing effort to help people whose jobs were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic to get back to work. The program helps people with tuition-free job training, case management, support services, and employment assistance. Job seekers are being encouraged to enroll through an online intake portal. Once you are registered in the portal, participants will complete a brief skills inventory and receive a career coach to help them
Mm,
access
wow.
training that meets their skills and interests. Participants can also explore career paths, learning opportunities, and find available jobs. Career Connecticut was
Mhm.
funded with $70 million from the American Rescue Plan. And Michelle, I'll say this every single time: any kind of government program that is intended to put people to work and is meant to help people gain job skills that they can immediately turn into employment is an
Oh,
amazing opportunity. And it's something that all of these states should be doing.
amen. Absolutely. This is where we lack, and especially, and I mean, there's other states too, but in Connecticut, I mean, people are leaving in droves to seek states with lower taxes, more job opportunity, and so we need to make the state business friendly. We need to start working on this. I'm glad to hear about this opportunity, and I agree. It's government doing something good finally.
Yeah. Well, again, I think the same thing holds true. I heard a lot of the candidates around election time talk about making trade schools
Yes,
free or more affordable. And it's like, well, yeah, again,
necessary.
people who
Yes,
have job skills are much more likely to be involved in some sort of a career, whether it's a trade or otherwise. And again, that's what we want. We want people to have the ability to earn a living, not just do a job, but to have job skills really that could, I mean, you don't have to necessarily work for company A. If those skills apply to,
right.
30, 40 other companies, you're that much more likely that, if you're laid off in one place, job opportunity could arise in another because you have the skills necessary. So kudos to the state of Connecticut for that. I love
Oh,
it.
absolutely. And just I think there's enough service-based jobs. It'd be nice to start producing in the state again. This is great. Yes, we need
Yep.
skills. So, Mayor Justin Elicker announced Monday that the city of New Haven is launching a new Office of Climate and Sustainability. Elicker introduced Stephen Winter as the office's executive director, who will work with the city departments, community organizations, and city residents. The goal is to advance and coordinate citywide climate and environmental sustainability policies, practices, and initiatives. The City Board of Alders approved funding for the new office in August. Okay. I am all for the environment being clean, and I am all for climate sustainability. I am all for this stuff, but we have to be a little bit more practical, I think, and spending money maybe that cities don't have for this stuff when people are suffering and can't afford, to pay their oil bill, can't heat their homes, gas prices, food prices, what have you. We have to see what takes precedent here.
Yeah, again, look, I'm a big proponent of us doing all we can for the climate, but I don't like spending money just for the sake of spending
Right,
money. I feel
right.
like when things are more targeted, I think that makes infinitely more sense. The idea of keeping accountability for the money that you are spending, that you have an ability to also measure the results. Like, what exactly are the goals? How do we get there, and how do we make sure that the money we're spending goes towards the ultimate goal of, you know, protecting ourselves from climate change? New Haven is
Yeah.
obviously on the water, so it is
Right.
important
Right.
that they do something about, climate and climate change for the future. But again, kind of as you alluded to with the high inflation and prices where they already are, I'm not sure if right now is exactly the moment where
Time.
you need to kind of roll out a program like that. Again, I do think it's important because, we don't want to see New Haven underwater
Of
5 or
course.
10 or 15 years from now. But at the same time, I think being fiscally responsible and making sure that we're putting the money where it needs to be in the immediate future makes a little bit more sense. So an
Well,
interesting move, but we'll see how this thing
absolutely.
plays out.
The thing, it's your point on fiscal accountability. Usually these policies, they want to start them, but do we really know where the money is going? What kind of, where, like, again, where's the accountability for these departments and who's being hired? Do they have the capability of doing what they're saying they're doing? So it's all these aspects too. It's not just, it is spending money we don't have, but it's also, where's the money going? That's a great point.
Yeah. Again, I think it's something that's necessary. I'm not sure that I would have made this
Mhm.
priority number when they just created this position in August.
Right.
I think, again, where we were in August to where we are now, it's like, I think as you're saying, I'm not sure that's the best place to spend a lot of money right now. A year from now, I think when we get a handle on inflation and get things back to where they need to be, I think that would make a
Absolutely.
lot more sense. And even someone like me would be a lot more excited to hear that news
Oh,
if we
absolutely.
were just in a slightly better position. And again, we've
Well,
talked so much about the
right.
education system. I think if you're New Haven, you should be putting as much of your resources into the kids and into the education system as opposed to anything else, at least in the short term. That's where I would go.
Absolutely. It'd be nice if, they focused on the economy first,
Yeah.
which trickles down to people. So
Yep. Well, we did have our first snow here
yeah,
in Connecticut of the
don't be
season.
surprised.
And I'll tell you a little bit more than I thought it was going to
Mhm.
be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The Connecticut State Police announced that they responded to over 300 calls for service and over 30 crashes from
Ugh,
midnight Sunday through Monday morning. Some 350 calls for service, 54
oh my
calls
God.
for traffic services, including crashes, spinouts, and disabled vehicles. Of the 54 calls for traffic services, 39 were crashes, including 6 with injuries, according to state police. The
Oh,
northern portions of the state were hit hardest by the snow Sunday into Monday, with up to around 7 inches of snow in some parts of northwest Connecticut overnight. That's according to the National Weather Service. There were between 3 and 4 inches of snow in Hartford overnight. Southern portions of the state saw between 1 and 3. I'm in Weathersfield. We got a pretty good amount. And I'll tell you what, Michelle,
yeah. Yeah.
I know back in the day, but I get very confused because here in Weathersfield today, no delay.
Right.
Glastonbury, the next town over, had a 2-hour delay.
Huh.
West Hartford on the other side of us had a 2-hour delay.
Okay.
And Hartford had a 2-hour delay. And I thought to myself, what did the ice just melt faster in Weathersfield? Where I
The
don't,
next town over.
it
Yeah.
there doesn't appear to be much rhyme or reason these days as to which schools are closed and which schools get a delay or don't get a delay.
Yeah.
Safety obviously is the most important thing, and you're looking at some 300 calls. That tells me
Mm,
that the state probably should have closed down a little bit at some point just to allow the roads to get into better condition. You see something like that, and it's like, oh, I don't know. I think like a lot of that could have been avoided.
Sometimes I wonder if it has to do with the bus services as well, that kind of predict, we need some more time, the buses aren't working properly, or there is too much ice where we are. So yeah, does depend on that. And then obviously the superintendent makes the choice. So
Yeah.
and wants to sleep in. No, I'm kidding.
Right? It's always very well.
Yeah,
Here's the other thing. Again, I'm just recovering from a heart attack.
I know.
I could have used some delay time this morning to clear my driveway.
Right, right. That makes
I'm
the
not
point.
not
Sure,
as handy outside as I used to
sure.
be, and so instead got the kids ready with no extra time. And I have an SUV, thank God,
Yeah.
and I just ripped it, down the driveway. And once I got to the end of the driveway, sliding a little bit, the road was fine, and I didn't have any other issues going forward. But they should
Yeah,
certainly take that into account that generally during these storms, and the DOT does, I think, as good a job as you could do, but
yeah.
they tend to leave across the bottom of your driveway a giant ice wall. And it makes things a little more difficult. I'm
Difficult,
just
you think?
saying, I would have taken 15 or 20 minutes extra this morning, would have gone a long way. That's all I'm trying to
I
say.
was expecting, I was expecting a dusting, but yeah, it really came down. And then I
Yeah.
didn't expect the ice either. So you know what? It's New England. Wait 5
Can I
minutes.
tell you
weather
something?
changes. Mhm.
Michelle, my 7-year-old son, I picked him up from school today at 3 o'clock, and he looked at me, and there's snow all over the place. And he goes, I think snow, when it's untouched and the sun's reflecting on it, is so beautiful.
This is your 7-year-old. Wow.
7 years old. And I
Awesome. I
said
love
to
it.
him, you know what? You are such a sweet kid. And you know
Aw.
what? You're right. People complain about snow, and we've lived here forever. But I think sometimes to just sort of take the 7-year-old approach and step back and look at that and just
Oh,
marvel really at
absolutely.
how beautiful snow really is, and
It
how
sure
lucky
is.
we are that we do get that as one of our seasons in the Northeast here in
Oh,
Connecticut.
absolutely. I mean,
Right?
I prefer warm weather, but I also do love the 4 seasons and how we get to experience, all this type of weather. We always complain, "No, it's too cold, we want warmth. When it's too hot, we want colder," and we're never happy. But,
We're
I
never
agree.
happy.
I agree,
Yeah.
never happy.
Just to step back for 1 minute and be like, you know what? I like that.
Oh,
I thought
absolutely.
that was so interesting that he had that sort of perception about it, especially to be that old and to think
I
that
love
way.
it. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, not being happy about the weather and people are not being happy about getting their packages, stolen.
Yeah.
2022 package theft in America report ranks Hartford and New Haven fourth nationwide for the cities where thieves strike the most. In first place is San Francisco, followed by Seattle and Austin. When it comes to safest cities, your package is the most secure in Miami, Tampa, Raleigh, Orlando, and Cleveland. About 260 million packages disappeared from porches within the last year, according to the study. That's about 50 million more than the year before and follows the increasing trend of online ordering. According to the study, about 32% of stolen packages will be worth less than $50, while 40% will be in the $50 to $100 range. About 1% of the nabbed merchandise will be worth more than $500. People are more concerned about stolen packages than violent crime. This is according to the survey, with 53% of people stating they worried about the package theft and 49% worried about the violent crime. About 1 in 3 Americans have had a package stolen, according to this 2022 data, up from 20% the previous year. If it happens to you, SafeWise, SAFEYISE, suggest filing a police report, sharing any security footage with officers, contacting the retailer, and then filing a claim with your mail carrier. People are more concerned. Well, I guess, you know what? People are more concerned with their packages than actual violent crime. Both are bad, but to me, I think the life is a little bit more important than the goods that we have.
Yeah, I find it funny too, again, only about 1% of these packages are actually high-priced items. And I just saw
Yeah,
there's a company, I
right.
don't remember which company it is, but they are currently packaging all of their packages in TV boxes. And they have
Oh,
found that the way the delivery services will handle the TV, they're much more careful with a television than they are most other items. And by packing all of these things in television boxes, or what appears to be a television box, that uh, they're seeing less damage to everyday items. And so
okay.
again, I think people are less inclined to try to steal a big screen TV because it looks huge.
Right. A
Um,
little bit
but to
noticeable.
see,
Yes,
right,
that's
I
true.
mean, about 72% of these thefts are items under $100, and it's like it's not even worth it in the long
Right,
run. I mean,
exactly,
why
exactly.
you're even stealing from people is beyond me.
Well,
But yeah, at this point, honestly, I swear, Michelle, you just can't get ahead in this world, and you
no.
just can't catch a break. That's pretty much the way it goes. Meanwhile, a study published by Rent Cafe on Monday zooms in, looking at rental markets that are the most competitive, meaning lots of prospective renters competing for very few apartments or homes. Competition typically drives prices even higher. Inflation and a bounce back from COVID-19 sent the cost of housing through the roof. Nationwide, rent is up 14% from 2021 to 2022. That's according to Credit Karma. In some states like Florida, the rent has jumped
Mm.
as much as 22%.
Ugh,
The Northeast is also well represented with areas in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut ranked. Bridgeport, New Haven was number 19 on the list. Now, what 2023 has in store for renters is yet to be seen, but experts are actually signaling some hope. Fed Chair Jerome Powell, in a speech last week, declined to, or pointed to the decline rather in goods as an encouraging sign. Powell suggested that housing costs, including rent, which have been a major driver of inflation, should also start to slow in 2023. Wholesale prices in the United States rose 7.4% in November from a year earlier, a fifth straight slowdown, and a hopeful sign that inflation pressures across the country are
yeah,
continuing to cool off.
that's a huge hope. I heard that
I
too. I was in a forum of very smart uh, financial people, and they were talking about. They were really thinking that by June the economy should come back, and that even I know how the interest rate hikes have been going on.
Yep.
That might even come down, which is a huge break. Um,
Oh, yay.
and they're thinking that the economy will come back, inflation will go down, and so we can only hope.
Well, that is exciting news.
Yeah, it's it's something that it's beyond needed. It's beyond needed. Um, well, if you're eager to file your 2022 tax return in January or early February, oh yeah, I can't wait. The IRS has a warning. You'll need to wait for key documents before filing in 2023. In a release last week, the IRS urged early filers to watch for Form 1099-K, which reports income for third-party payment networks, such as Venmo or PayPal. A little extra caution could save time and effort, the agency said, because if you don't report 1099-K income, you may owe money and need to file an amended return. Tax filers should build in a little time to allow for slow or misdirected mail when filing your return. It's important to accurately report details from all tax forms, such as the W-2 from your job, 1099 NEC forms for contract work, and 1099-G for unemployment income, known as information returns. These forms are sent to taxpayers yearly by employers and financial institutes to report taxable activity, with copies going to the IRS. Your tax return should match these forms, assuming the details are correct. When the IRS receives your income directly from reporting companies, the system automatically flags mismatching returns. That's why it's better to wait and include the correct details, experts say. Otherwise, you'll risk possible error notices and penalties later. Yeah, I agree. I sometimes I get ahead of myself just to get it done, and I filed my tax return, and about 2 weeks later, I get another form, not realizing I missed a whole form, and so it's a pain in the butt. So I agree, just wait a little bit. And I don't think people are just too eager to file, unless you're getting a refund, I guess. But I don't think people are too eager to file ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anybody who wants to I mean, I get it, the idea of getting it done, getting your refund done. But
Right.
yeah, I think, by and large, I think most people are looking to wait as late into the game as humanly possible. And it seems like that's kind of what the IRS is looking for you to do.
Yeah.
So go get them. All right, our final headline tonight, some national news. A federal judge on Monday dismissed former President Donald Trump's lawsuit challenging the government's access to materials seized from his Mar-A-Lago resort, marking the formal end to Trump's months-long legal fight following the FBI's raid of his home. The judge's order came 4 days after Trump declined to appeal a higher court ruling that canceled the appointment of a special master to review the thousands of items taken by federal agents during that August 8th raid of Trump's Florida residence. Judge Eileen Cannon, who's a Trump appointee, signed a one-page order dismissing the case for lack of jurisdiction. The order, filed in U.S. District Court in West Palm Beach, Florida, also terminated all hearings, deadlines, and motions that were still pending in the case. That includes Trump's effort to obtain an unredacted version of the search warrant affidavit that was used to sanction the raid. A 3-judge panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit ruled December 1st that Cannon should not have appointed the special master, writing that she improperly exercised an expansion of her jurisdiction. The panel gave the former president 1 week to seek a stay of its ruling by filing an appeal to a full circuit or to the U.S. Supreme Court. Trump's attorneys did not file an appeal. They had already faced rejection from the Supreme Court as part of the case. The High Court in October battled away Trump's request to reverse a prior ruling from the 11th Circuit, which had barred the special master from examining the classified documents. Last week's ruling from the appeals court could clear a path for federal investigators to more quickly review the thousands of items they had previously been blocked from accessing. More bad news for Donald Trump, unfortunately, is what that sounds like.
I know. But we do have a guest, and so I want to get to the weather and introduce him. He will be on after our commercial. Tonight, the temperature will get down to a low of 21 degrees with clear skies. Tomorrow, Tuesday, will reach a high of 35 with sunny skies. Tomorrow night, we'll get down to 21 degrees with clear skies. Wednesday will be the same as Tuesday, a high of 35 degrees with sunny skies. And you are watching Connecticut Politics TV Live. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our guest, former State Representative Russ Morin. He will join us next.
CT Politics TV and the Connecticut Taxpayers Union present On Affordable America with Daniel Kent Newmeyer, Joe Patrina's band Little House, focusing on Connecticut.
Now get yourself ready, go cat go. Ooh, yeah.
Entertaining and taking an educational look at nonpartisan issues of affordable living in America.
Born in a land where we wave 'em high.
All points of view are welcome.
And we got blue angels climbing in the sky. I'm the luckiest guy in America. I'm the luckiest man born in America.
Join the Connecticut Taxpayers Union right now at ctpolitics.tv.
Born in America.
Welcome back to Connecticut Politics TV. I'm Joe Aguirre along with Michelle Botello. Our guest is Russ Morin, who was first elected in 2006 to represent the 28th House District in Wethersfield before retiring in 2021. Russ was Deputy Speaker of the House. He also served as a member of the Finance, Transportation, Commerce, and Legislative Management Committees. He's a frequent guest on my radio program. He's also one of the coolest guys I know. Russ, thank you, as always, for coming on and lending the expertise.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Hey, Michelle, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I heard
Now
good things,
listen,
Russ.
he's
Oh,
a
don't
great
believe
guy.
it all.
Listen, before we dive into the politics and some of the more controversial stuff, I saw a picture of you on Facebook wearing a Buccaneers jersey, and I'm just
Oh.
curious: have you always been a Buccaneers fan, or is this we're following Tom Brady? What's going on, Russ?
Kind of all of the above. My brother's had seasons tickets for 38 years down there.
Okay,
And so every year for many years, I've been going down to a game or two a year. And, COVID kind of threw a little bit of a wrinkle. But this year I went down, I saw the Rams game, and I was at the last Monday night game against the Saints. So it's a lot of fun. The much more fun thing I got to do is we went to a fundraiser for Big Brothers Big Sisters on
Oh, I got some pics, Russ. Pull them up your page. There's you and Levante David.
Oh,
me and Levante. Yeah, I had one with Mike Evans.
that's great.
Is this the
Gerald
one with
McCoy.
Mike Evans?
The problem standing next to those guys is you look a whole lot older and fatter than you really do. But it was terrific. They're great guys and had a good cause. I love Big Brothers Big Sisters, great cause. So it was a lot of fun.
I used to be very involved with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, a tremendous organization. So I'm glad you got to go down there, enjoy yourself. And I'm glad to find out you're not a flip-flopper. You're just a man whose brother's got some tickets, and you're just going down there enjoying some nice sunshine. That's
Joe,
good.
just imagine 80 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. His seats are on the 50-yard line in the first row of the club level. It's like, what's better than that?
Yes.
Actually, seeing a good team play, maybe, but
yeah, right. Well, Russ,
Okay,
I recently am recovering from a heart attack, and the worst thing I could have done yesterday was watching the Giants play the Eagles. That did nothing for my health at all.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I did watch part of that Bucks-Niners game yesterday. That was equally as unimpressive, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys want me to get you a bear or something? Some nuts?
I know, right?
Yeah. You have any pretzels?
There you go.
Now,
Nice.
All right,
let
I'll
me
stop.
mention something before we get cooking here. Russ was also the mayor of Wethersfield, and I've mentioned quite a few times. I've been living here for about a decade now. Absolutely love this town and love the people in it, and most of the people who represent it. You've always done a really great job with this town, and even in your retirement, you're always representative of the town of Wethersfield, always actively involved. How much do you love this town? Clearly.
I was born and raised here like many, and chose to stay and raise my family. I just always looked at the most important things to me was the quality of life. And, we raised our children here. They went to school here. Two of my adult daughters are both married and have homes here. It's just a special place to me. I love the sense of community. And I really just am always been impressed with the folks that, whether they be your school teachers, the people that take care of the town physically. I could go back and forth and say I like this mayor better than others, but that stuff is that stuff, and it's always going to be. But the nuts and bolts and what makes a community, just like when somebody's down and having a problem, a bunch of other people will step up and help. And it's really, we're a few miles from Hartford, and we have our own little aura. I love the back and forth. When I was mayor, one of the things I wanted to do was do more with Hartford, because they're our neighbors, and if they're having success and they're doing well, we're doing well. Was my mentality. But there's just so many nice things and great people that are here that make it a nice town. And we run into each other in the same places, whether it's on a field for our kids or watching our kids sing in a concert or whatever it is. You just see all the people that put their time in it. And I got involved, Joe and Michelle. When I first started getting involved, I was in the Emerson Williams PTO, and we were trying to raise money to build a playscape. And that's where I started.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how I got started. I really we saw a need, and me and a couple of because it was mostly moms. There were no guys in the PTO at that time. A couple of my friends, we started brainstorming, and we ended up raising close to 30,000, and we're able to put up today.
Awesome.
Today it's like 100, but 30 grand. We put up a really nice playscape, and then I said, well, you know what? I come from a political family. My mom worked for, you guys are both too young, but worked for a guy named John Bailey, who was the Democratic power broker in the 60s, especially. And she worked at the state capitol. So I knew a lot of political people, and I ran for the Board of Ed.
You know, it's funny, Russ. There are people in this town who will complain about the high taxes. And this is the highest taxed place I've ever lived. But I will say this. I feel like I get my money's worth living in a town like Wethersfield. I think the services provided to the citizens of this town, and you couple that with the education in this town, I don't think, I think you're definitely making up for it in the long run.
I think so. And I'm at the point now where I'm one of those older guys. My children are all through the school system. Now I have grandchildren going through, but I just virtually have no qualms whatsoever knowing what's taking place, and that my grandchildren and your kids and other people's kids are getting that education. And if you go back and forth, like some towns that might have a lower mill rate than us, they don't pick up your leaves. They don't pick up your trash. Our sewer fees are in our property taxes. We don't pay a separate thing to the MDC. So, we can always complain about things, and we do. But
sure,
overall, I've always been happy here. And I talked to my wife when we were in Florida. I said, "Geez, wouldn't it be nice to spend some time in a warmer climate, when we retire?" And she just smacked me in the head and said, "We're not going anywhere. You're going to stay near our grandkids, and don't get any crazy ideas."
No ideas.
Well, I'm glad you're staying.
Oh yeah, me too.
Now, Connecticut's a great state, lots of potential. We need more leaders that can, care and want to do things for our kids. And like you said, there was a need, and you went to go help. This is how it should be.
Michelle, you're right. And part of the problem, but with any town, there's always competing interest, right? You have to be cognizant of that. But some folks are on a fixed income. Some folks have no kids. They couldn't care less about what you're doing. And, so it's always, it's not an easy thing to do, to try to come up with something. But I think people if they see where their tax dollars are going, they may complain, but they get it. When Joe, and I don't know if you were in town, but 2003 was my first year as mayor, and we had the single largest tax increase in the town history. And when we were running, we said, we're going to do this. We're going to fix the roofs. Schools had leaking roofs. They didn't have heating systems that worked. Roads were abominable. Yeah. We came through. We said, we're going to do A, B, C, D, E, and F. You vote for us, this is going to happen. And we did it. But there's a cost to it. And people said, you're never going to win again. The next time we ran, we won with the same plurality, because while people may not have been overly thrilled with paying, they saw something for their tax dollars. And, it's...
in this past election, question one was, I believe, the only referendum question that we were dealing with was the appropriation of a lot of money.
Yep.
To the schools, most of this, and as it turns out, the school my kids are going to and your grandkids are at is actually the one that's in the best amount of shape. And some of these other schools are in desperate need of repair. And the idea was to move the kids around and work on the schools one at a time. And I'm shocked that this happened, but it got turned down.
I wasn't shocked. It was unfortunately, it was a ton of money. It was like $265 million. It was a ton of money. It was not, there was not great detail given to the constituents. There was not great anything shared. I was frustrated with what our town leaders were sharing or not sharing, because if you're going to ask people to put that kind of money out, they want to at least know what's going on. And the biggest mistake that was made was not working with the Charles Wright families. Because they felt like they were being left out. Now again, I'm 100 years old, guys. But when I was going to elementary school, I went to elementary school at the community center, which was then Greenfield School. There were 11 elementary schools when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, and now there's 5. This is not something that's new where you have to adjust and readjust.
Right. And there's more children too. That's unfortunate to see that. And what I'm noticing too, and I worked in the public school system, is the teachers are wonderful, but they're overwhelmed. They're doing the duties of, if you will, non-teaching or non-instructive. They're bogged down with that. And then the classrooms they're just too many children for one teacher. And if there's an aide, great, but if not, the two most vulnerable populations, this country, children and elderly, the two most vulnerable populations need to be taken care of. And I feel like we kind of push them aside sometimes. And I don't know if it's politics. I don't know if it's just people that, don't care and looking just to, please special interest, if you will. But I'm glad you're talking about it. I'm glad you see what's happening, and this is what we need our leaders to do.
You brought it up. I may be biased. One of my daughters is a public school teacher, and her husband is a public school teacher. And the things they love their profession, right, and they love teaching. But today, Michelle, you hit the nail on the head. There's many times when we can't, because of whatever's going on. People are not going into the profession,
absolutely,
or they can't get adequate subs or qualified substitutes. So there's times when they're asking a teacher to just watch 2 or 3 classes. It's not all day, but it's a period of time. So there's not what can you possibly be accomplishing educationally at that point? Right. And did you see going in the technical high school system, a state issue? There's a lawsuit against Wilcox Tech because they didn't have a math teacher for X amount of periods of time, and that's not uncommon. At Princeton, they've closed school, I think 4 or 5 times this year because they didn't have enough teachers to staff the building.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's frustrating too, because, we heard about this special session with all this rainy day money fund, and Connecticut is, we got this big surplus, but, it's kind of weird. They're holding on to it. And it'd be nice to be able to really allocate that to some, okay, you know what? Let's give to the teachers who need to help our students.
Michelle, the best debate of all time right there. And you'll hear it. You'll hear it this year. I had, because I served for 14 years. I served when we had amazing deaths, and we had to make decisions that were just heartbreaking. And then I've had the pleasure of serving when we had money and we could do. And I mean, one of the things that people don't see, and it's not a romantic thing, but with the surpluses, when they get to a certain amount, they're just throwing that money into paying off our debt, our pension deficiencies. And it's like, for years, this stuff kind of just got swept under by a lot of people. I voted on budgets that did the same thing, and we did it out of necessity to a degree. But when you're seeing that there's these great needs, it's very difficult to say, how can you, not want to take some of this money, or why wouldn't you take some of it and put it towards this problem? In education, if you can't put money towards that, I don't know what
absolutely.
Thinking.
Especially now. I don't know if you saw last week, Russ, for the first time in a while, the money we're bringing in is actually now surpassed our debts. So the state, not only are our books pretty good, but we're actually starting to really, really do well, which I have to say, and I think this went a long way in this past election, that people are giving kudos to this Democratic regime that has been very fiscally responsible. Again, if you go back to the debates, Bob Stefanowski wanted to spend, and Ned was like, no, we're going to sit on this money, which that didn't seem like it jived out. But, now we really are in a position where, we could really take care of ourselves kind of going forward here. And that's very exciting news.
So the one thing they really have to be careful about too, though, is, they dropped that 25 cents in the gas tax when gas was, up in the $4 plus, and they're going to be bringing that back 5 cents incrementally, 5 cents at a month or something like that. But the one thing that I've always been near and dear to my heart is a special transportation fund, and our infrastructure definitely needs that influx. That's why I supported tolls. Frankly, I would have been okay eliminating a lot of that gas tax and doing tolls because our bridges and roads. I mean, it's crippling when those things are not operating as they're supposed to. financially as well as our own time. But
Yeah, no,
that's me.
absolutely. No, that's a great point, actually. Now, you worked for the Connecticut, Department of Labor. Is that correct?
Department of Transportation when I was a state employee for
Oh,
17
okay.
years.
Not the
I work for
Department
a
of Labor.
union now. I'm a labor guy. I work for a
Oh,
union now. When
okay.
I lost my mind and decided to run for the state legislature, and then I actually won, I had to give up my state job, which I'd had for 17 years, and then dabbled around a little bit, and ultimately around 14 years ago, I got hired by a labor union representing workers in disciplinary matters and such, contractual issues. So
do you
that's a
find
challenge.
I was going to say, it must be a huge challenge. You find it, the difficulty of kind of, who do I kind of represent? The employer, the employee, the unions, it must be all over the place.
With my job at the union, I represent. So the thing you have to do is you have to represent the employee in the contractual things, even if they're wrong. It's much like being an attorney, but you have to ensure that the one thing clear is if somebody does something wrong, I'm not saying, hey, great for you, I'm going to get you off. We make sure process is followed. My job is to ensure that the contractual process and procedures are being adhered to, and what occurs in the disciplinary thing. But listen, I'm one of those, no matter what, even when somebody deserves to get fired or get suspended, I still feel bad because I hate to see people losing money. But listen, when things are self-inflicted, you have to, like anything else, we teach our kids, and we've been taught, you have to own up. If you mess up, you have to own up.
No, I love it. There's no accountability in government, I find. So that sounds so good.
Russ, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my father was the president of the International Electrical Workers in New Haven, for Metro North. And part of the reason why my dad got involved in the union was my grandfather also worked for Metro North. And my father, as he got a little bit older, found out that the job my grandfather was doing should have been done by two individuals, not the one.
Yep.
And so my dad got involved in the union and thought, I'm going to make life hell for these people for what they did to my father. And there were many situations where, where my dad knew somebody deserved to be fired, and he would pressure the bosses to, give these guys another chance, give them extra training and pay them while they were going and receiving training. And my dad always found, and I'm curious kind of your feelings on this, the rank and file guys thought he was too close to the bosses, and the bosses thought he was too involved with the rank and file guys. And it always put my dad in a weird spot. Kind of what is your experience, kind of with that?
I couldn't have said, it's like you're just mirroring what we say all the time.
Yeah.
When you do what I do, I'm dealing with management and labor relations people. And you could take kind of two tacks. You can be a total jerk all the time and slam your fist on the table and yell at people. And you know how far that gets you? People have absolutely no use or respect for you.
Right.
But the members expect a certain amount of fist thumping. But I prefer, my style is more to try to work with people when you can. And not every issue requires you to jump up and down and scream. So there are people that do what I do that have a much different tact. For me, I like to be able to go into a room and talk to that person, try to find a common ground and make less headaches for my member. And there are times when I've been pretty ornery when I felt I had to, but for the most part, what you see here is what you get. When I go into that room, I want to be a professional. I want to try, because at the end of the day, the people making those decisions, if I'm just a jerk all the time, they're going to be predetermined. Oh, here comes Russ. Forget it. And it's not, that wouldn't be fair to my members, but our members say that all the time. If they see me talking to a manager, they think that I'm in bed with them.
Yep.
It's just natural. It's kind of unfortunate, but Joe, you hit the nail on the head there.
I love it. Let me ask you this. You and I obviously talked quite a bit leading up to the election, and You pretty much nailed it. You pretty much called what was going to happen here. And my major concern was to see all the polling. Democrats were leading everywhere. And everybody kept talking about their top concern being inflation, being the economy. And this state somehow got even bluer with this election. And I have suggested, since this election was over, that the Republicans might want to take a step back and really figure things out here, because I think the conditions for this election seem to be, at least on a local level and probably even a national level, maybe their best opportunity in years to really make some strides, and to see places like Greenwich and Southington where certain areas went blue for the first time like ever.
Yep.
What do you think that says about the state of the Republican Party, or do you think that speaks more about the Democrats at this point?
All of the above, but going to what the state of the Republican Party, I still think you have down in Greenwich per se, Kim Fiorella lost, and she was very much a Trump Republican, and I think if you're looking in many communities, that doesn't play well. Some communities it does, it really does, but I think that people were more. Connecticut. I mean, let's look at Leora Levy and Themis Claritas. Anybody in their right mind that thinks that Leora Levy is more qualified to hold a seat than Themis Claritas, I would just look at you and tell you, I think you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
Now, Themis and I used to battle all the time, but I respect the daylights out of her. She's a very intelligent woman. She's passionate. She loses in a primary. Yeah. I think she would have given Dick Blumenthal. I don't think she would have beat him, but I think she would have given him a much better race.
Yeah.
That type of thing, and I think where you see in Fairfield County where the voters are never would say this, but tend to be a little more progressive. They're seeing this. Yeah. In but then you go east of the river and see some of the numbers, and it's like, wow. So, it's going a little different. It's areas where it used to be, but it's not even part. Watch out, my cat's trying to jump in. You're not even like parlaying, like, because Joe Courtney won beautifully, and I think Lamont did well in Eastern Connecticut, but local reps and senators took a pretty good pounding. So it's really a lot of factors. I think our Democrats had great messaging. They kept talking about Ned's leadership during the pandemic, and this is what we're doing for you. We have these surpluses so we can take care of the things that are important to you. And the leader of each party, I think, did a better job of that. Because I think, face it, the ads, how many? Gosh, I'm so glad we don't have to watch them anymore.
Tell me about it. The mail, the ads, absolutely.
But I think the messaging from the top down was more positive and more believable.
Were you shocked that Bob Stefanowski, running for governor for 4 years since his last loss, somehow did even worse this time around? Like, have you ever seen anything like that? That was stunning.
I did not expect him to win, but I did expect him to do a better job than he did. I didn't expect him to lose by 12 points?
Yeah.
Something like that.
12 points.
I thought that he would do better. Remember when Eddie Munster was running, and was it against Gadenson? Remember Ed Munster down in the congressman in the second congressional district? That guy ran like 3 times. The first 2 times it was nail biters. And the third time he got pummeled. And I kind of thought that with Bob Stefanowski. I was very surprised to see this margin. I was happy, but
I was gonna say, it worked out in the long run. Yeah, I was, I had talked to that campaign quite a bit leading up to the election, both him and Laura Devlin, and they both told me their internal polling showed a much closer race. And I thought, no, that sounds right. This could probably be close to that 3.5. Yep. To see him get blown out, I was definitely shocked. The other thing that cracked me up, and I think I had mentioned this to you, but they dismiss the polls out of hand. And a lot of Republicans these days, polls are garbage. The second that 5th district poll showed up, though,
and it
showed Logan ahead of Hayes, they immediately were like, this is the gold standard in polling. And it's like the same polls show you guys down 15 points. What do you, all of a sudden you're buying the one where you look good in? Like, how do we get Republicans back to reality of polls are generally pretty accurate and, you know, people aren't going to buy the nonsense. They're just not interested in that anymore.
You know, I guess, you know, if you get pounded enough, at some point you should learn. And they again, I served with a bunch of great people on that side of the aisle. I mean, I hate to get into the divide too much. We had some great battles and such, but
that's what makes good politics.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I'd love to. I know you probably have a time constraint, but there'd be great times to talk about just the great things you actually do and the things that the public just doesn't see, because really all we want to see is whatever's going to sell, right? The brawling, the name calling, that's stuff. But the majority of it's just not that way. At least in this House of Representatives and Senate that I worked with. But you know, I just think that Joe, you've said it 100 times. Just you can't be so extreme. Right. And we have some in our own party.
Sure.
If you go to the far left. But when you run with that extreme mantra, regular folks just don't buy into it.
Yeah.
Russ, you are the founder of the Wethersfield We Care. Is that correct?
Yeah, but long ago I was mayor. We disbanded, but it was during the war, Iraq War. We worked with a bunch of people. Bob Peters, I don't know if you remember Mayor Mike.
Oh yeah,
Mayor Mike's brother Bob and I were pretty close, and I was talking to some military guys I knew that were talking about the hardships that the men and women that were serving overseas were facing, and so we just started getting donations, and Paul Montanari donated some shipping containers, and we worked stuff out, and we sent a bunch of stuff overseas. It was terrific.
That's awesome.
You know, it really was. Talking about using connections. I had a guy who worked with the DOT because we could get the stuff overseas, but we couldn't get it to where the soldiers were. So I had to use a guy who's like he was a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. He was a DOT guy, and he cut the red tape. So once we got the containers overseas, we could get them to the men and women, and they actually sent pictures of the stuff. That it was wonderful. It's pretty cool to be able to do something like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
This guy is such a wonderful person, Russ Morin. I always appreciate your time. You're always so willing to come on the radio with me. We're definitely lacking in the video element, so it's great to see your face while we're doing this. We'll definitely have you back on.
You don't think I have a face for radio, Joe?
Oh, you're too much. You really are. Ladies and gentlemen, former state rep Russ Morin, again, as always. Yeah, my cat's been doing the same thing right here at my feet. Too funny.
But thank you so much.
Oh,
thank
Russ,
you. Great to meet you.
Glad to have you on, and we'll have you on again coming into the new year. Much appreciated, my friend, as always.
All right. Pleased to meet you, Michelle. Take care.
You as well. What a great guy.
I love Russ Morin. He really is such a great guy. One of my favorite people.
How to get things done too.
He really does. You know, there was a time where that was necessary in politics, where you had to do that, and Russ is definitely from that age. I appreciate him coming on and enlightening us. And again, now that he's retired, you know, he can really break things down. Love talking to him. We'll definitely see him again as we get into 2023. Real quick, before we wrap things up, the Boo with the Box, the Shabu All-Stars, David Lefty, Foster, Jeff Pitchell, Christine Ullman, James Montgomery, and John Cafferty. The benefit concert for Covenant Soup Kitchen is coming up on Sunday, December 18th. There's 2 shows, 3 and 7 p.m. You could search online at eventbrite.com. Just use the search word Shabu or Boo at the Box. The Foster Foundation and Klaus Larson Roofing have teamed up with the Bread Box to present this show at the Klaus Larson Auditorium, 29 Northridge Drive in North Windham. Tickets are just $20. And the Covenant Soup Kitchen desperately needs fun. They passed over 2 million meals in the last couple of years. Please if you can. Again, eventbrite.com, going to be an amazing concert. Tickets are just $20. I hope you will come out and support this
Yes.
amazing
Great
cause.
event for a good cause. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Get all the latest headlines concerning Connecticut by visiting ctpolitics.tv/headline-news. You can also follow us at CT Politics TV on social media. That's going to do it for us. For Michelle Botello, I'm Joe Aguirre. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, for Connecticut Politics Live. Good night.